Very well done, Amy. Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 28 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia, and we are looking forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We are highlighting another great organization this week and have Jason Luker with us today. Jason is the director of the Gaston County Museum in Dallas. Jason, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So we're going to get right to it. And, get right to it. If you don't mind, just share anything you'd like. Tell us a little bit about yourself, anything you'd like to share.
Okay. Well, I'm originally not from the area. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. Spent a couple of years as a kid in Vidalia, Georgia. So that's kind of the area I claim as my birthplace is Georgia and Alabama. Went to school at Auburn University and graduated in history. Fell in love with a military brat by the name of Mary Hill, whose family was from South Carolina, from the Inman, Spartanburg area.
Okay, yep.
And we got married, and when we were basically looking to move from Alabama, she wanted to be closer to some of her family members. So I was open for the idea. So we came up to the area, and we just fell in love with the Carolinas, both South Carolina and here in North Carolina. Met our home in Charlotte, lived there for many years, spent a tour of duty, we like to say, in Atlanta, which I think all good Southerners have to spend at least 6 months in Atlanta as a citizen. Then you move out again. And then we came back up here and have been here ever since.
Well, very good. Appreciate you sharing that. So how did you end up here at the Gaston County Museum?
It's kind of an interesting road. As I said, I was majored in history. That's always been my passion. It's always been my desire to work in the history field and in a museum setting or a historical site. And it took me around to different places. My first job was actually at Fort Defiance in Lenoir as a volunteer, and kind of worked my way up in the field. And we moved to Atlanta to follow the career. I was working with the aviation museums in Georgia, and we're down there during the Great Recession, which was a very bad time to be in the museum field. And my wife got called back. She's a school teacher, and she got called back to see if she would be interested in coming back to work in Mecklenburg County. Okay. And she jumped on that opportunity because we were looking, like I said, we fell in love with the area. We wanted to come back. And so she kind of brought us back here. And while we were here, I was working at this place called Historic Bratonsville down in York County. Wonderful site. Love it. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. Great place for people to visit. But I always had an inkling to come back to Gaston County. I'd been an intern when I was doing my master's program at UNCC. I was an intern at the Gaston County Museum. And It's just it was a unique building, which I love old buildings. And it's a unique history. Gaston County has a very distinct history. And I've always been very, very fascinated by it. And a job opened up here, so I thought, well, this is now or never kind of a thing. So I left a place I dearly loved to come up to do a history that I was just absolutely fascinated with. What brought me here to Gaston County was its past, what had happened here, and the unique stories that I was being introduced to, and just kind of built up from there, and they kept on saying, well, do you want to do this job? I said, yes, I do. You want to do this job? Yes, I do. You want to be the director? Yes, I do. So it's kind of moved up in that way for us.
So how long have you been at the museum?
Since 2013.
Okay.
So I started out as a programs manager, then moved up to be the assistant director, and then became the director about 4 years ago, if I remember right.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought that was the time frame. I didn't know the full time frame, though. So can you share, I'm not sure this is the right phrasing, but does the museum have a specific mission or what it's trying to accomplish here for our community?
Yeah, our mission is to interpret the art and history of Gaston County and its region through education, preservation, and collections. And, that's kind of our main, light to the area is to know the history and the art of our community and to share it and interpret it and preserve it and keep it here. So that's kind of what helps us through our planning and what we're trying to do for the next years, kind of moving forward. So I think for our community, it's kind of one of those unique things for Gaston County. Gaston County, it's most of its belief in itself, or the way it looks at itself. It looks at itself in little microcosms in its municipalities. And you talk to people from Gaston County, they say, well, I'm from Belmont, or I'm from Lowell, or I'm from Cherryville. And it's not necessarily I'm from Gaston County.
Right.
Or, the quintessential, we're all from Gasconia kind of a thing. But what's interesting is that you have all these little municipalities and all these little rich histories that are kind of separated. And I feel like the museum has, what our mission is, looking at bringing all that together. Not necessarily saying, you don't have it there. You don't. That's not what I'm saying. Is how you tie those all together. How do you tie Belmont and Cherryville together? How do you tie the different mills that created these towns? How do they all work together as a unique history? And that's what I look at for the museum, and also for this artistic. I think that's one thing we don't think about for Gaston County. It has a very rich art history. From music to paintings to sculptures. Some very important artists came from Gaston County, or called Gaston County home, or worked here in their craft. So that's something else I feel very passionate about for the museum, is to represent that in a much larger arc, to kind of show you the deep history and also the wonderful art that history produced, and how they all kind of intertwine with one another.
So, I've been fortunate to see your presentation a couple of times over the years, and one relatively recently at Rotary. So I kind of have a little bit of insight maybe, but I do think probably a lot of our listeners don't. It's one of those best kept secrets maybe in Gaston County, is the museum there in Dallas. Can you share, so how does the museum go about doing that mission? Are there specific initiatives that you have going on, or programs, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, I think this idea, this framework of looking at the museum is an old one. I think this is where they started from, and then we kind of, I wouldn't say we lost our way, but we got caught up into just being the Museum of Dallas,
okay,
and being the historical home, and that became kind of the model that we followed for about 20 years. I mean, we were saying, oh, we're the Gaston County Museum, but really we were being the Dallas Museum. And if you talk to people in the community, you say, oh, I work at the Gaston County Museum, and say, oh, you mean the Museum of Dallas? I mean, that's how the community saw it. So we kind of, got to this point where it's like, all right, we had to own our name. We're not the Dallas Museum. We're the Gaston County Museum that happens to be in Dallas.
Right.
So how do we modify ourselves, both in the programs we provide, but also our interpretation, our exhibitry, to be more inclusive in our community? So that's what we've been kind of working on. One of the biggest projects we have going forward is we're changing our permanent exhibitry. On the first floor, we actually have just hired a new curator, which she starts next week, which we're extremely excited about. Okay. That she'll be able to come in and take, grab this bull by the horns and start to really, formulate what that looks like. But we're also looking at our rotating galleries. Like right now, we have a gallery on James Biggers, who is a prominent artist in our area. Comes from the Biggers line, which is a huge art family, most notably known for John T. Biggers. And we have artwork that he produced in our exhibit, and we're also looking at some of his what was called sacred geometry, which he used and his uncle John T. Biggers used in their artwork. So this is a newer kind of push. It's more of a looking at it from a larger perspective of this is a Gaston County representative, because Jim worked at Gaston College. He worked at different schools in the area. He was a well-known artist throughout our state. Of course, his uncle was a renowned artist throughout the country and the world. So this is a chance to kind of broaden the scope of what we're covering at the museum. Kind of moving away from just looking at the hotel, but also looking at the community that the hotel was part of. Does that make any sense?
Right.
And kind of change that interpretation. So when you come in, yes, you are coming into the hotel that was located in Dallas, but what you're going to see is the history of our entire community tied together.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a lot to unpack there. Am I recalling correctly from your most recent program at the? Is there another facility, or you're doing some archiving somewhere?
We actually have 3 different campuses.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We have the main one in Dallas, which is the main building, which is the old Hoffman Hotel. We also have the carriage house that's behind it. We also have the train depot that we use for exhibit space and for art activities and different exhibits. That's all right there in downtown proper for Dallas. Then off just past Dallas Park, we have our new collections facility that just opened up, where we have our archives and collections, where people can come and make an appointment and we can pull some things from our archives and look and see what you're looking for. Do research center, not only a place to hold our archives, but also do research and for our community. Then we also have the Kessel History Center, which is the history center inside of Laurel Mills that covers the history of Laurel Mill, and we operate that as well.
Okay, I bet that might be an item, that a lot of our listeners may not be aware of. There's actually three separate locations. This kind of I like this question. I'm not sure how it would apply to the museum, but is there any specific examples you can share of where you saw firsthand, or you've seen firsthand the museum impacting something, or a family, an individual, a school, or just something you can share along those lines? Does that question make any sense at all?
It does, and it's one of those hard things because it's our services are typically very, I don't know how to put this, personal.
Sure. I get it. Yep.
People come in and look at something, we have no idea what they thought of it or how it's affected them. But I remember this one time we had an exhibit up that was dealing with the Laurel Mill strike, 1929 Laurel Mill strike, and everybody that came into that, when we put that up, it was a concern because it's not something you talk about in the community. That's what I was told when I first got here. Is like I was told this incredible story about the 1929 Laurel Mill strike, and people was like, "Oh, we just don't talk about it here." And when we decided to put up this big exhibit to go over the entire strike, we had a lot of people say, "I don't know how the community is going to handle this." I mean, I had people come in and call me and say, "How dare you talk about this? This is going to blow up in your face. This is going to be awful." All this kind of stuff. Well, when we put it up, everyone that came through, for the most part, would say, "This is great. It's about time. It's about time we study this. It's about time we talk about it." And it's been fascinating to watch since we put up that exhibit. Before that, when I would talk about the strike, I would get a lot of angry faces and a lot of crossed arms and no questions. And like people couldn't wait to get me out of the room. But after that, it's like a shift. People are like, "Want to know more? Can you come talk about this? Tell me more about what actually happened. How did the chief of police die? What kind of person was LMA Wiggins? Why was this so bad? How all this kind of stuff." So we saw a direct shift in what we were doing. And, this kind of more of an opened up in our community. It was almost like a release valve for the community. It was like, "Oh, we can talk about this. Oh, I can bring up the fact that my ancestor was a strike breaker or was a union organizer or things of this nature."
Right.
It's a completely set of changes I saw in our community pre and post that exhibit.
Well, that's good. That's a really interesting story because that is a big part of our history, frankly. That's interesting to hear your take on that. So if you look back on your time at the museum, this might be a tough question, but can you single out one or two things maybe that you're most proud of accomplishing at your time at the museum?
I was really proud of that strike exhibit. I thought it was, now it's on my brain. I'll say that. I was really thought that was something we did extremely well and was very, it was a passion project for myself and also for a lot of people. So it was great to see it kind of happen, and we thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm also proud of the development of the museum over this time. It's been a rocky road for all of us, but for us to really grab onto this idea of being more for the community, being a museum that stretches its boundaries throughout the entire county. That was not the mindset when I first started. And to see that be the mindset, of other people, now people are telling me, "Well, you need to do more in the county. You need to cover more." That is a wonderful thing to hear. So I'm very proud of that as well.
Very good. So, this is a podcast about Gaston County. Mm-hmm. So maybe in your own, and why Gaston's great, maybe in your own words, can you kind of share why is Gaston County better because the Gaston County Museum is here?
Well, man, I would say that, we're better because we invest into knowing our past, that we invest into saving our art. This is a county museum. This is not, just a private run facility. And we do have a 501c3 connected to it that provides a great deal of services to the organization. But this is a county museum, brought to you by the county. And that has become a very rare thing. in our state and throughout the nation, for the county and the residents to recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, I think it was just kind of ignored, but I think now we're starting to see a lot more where the expectations are changing. We expect the museum to be active. We expect the museum to be involved, and do the business of the county and preserve its history, to collect its history, and to interpret its art. I think this is it's a statement for our community. This is normally something that you wouldn't expect in a county, but it is. It's here and it's being done. And I think what makes what makes the museum important, I think, is the expectations of its community. I think that's what makes it important. It's not standing on its own 2 feet. It's standing because of the community. The community makes it important, and I think that's a very important thing when you think about a museum that's supposed to be serving its community. I think for a lot of museums, we kind of lose our way sometimes. We think, oh, we're so important because of this or that. No, we're important because people think we are, kind of a thing. And I think that's a very important thing for a museum to recognize, is if we are not serving our community, if we're not stretching ourselves to meet our community where they are with the questions that they have, then we're failing at our job.
All right, very good. And you mentioned, I think maybe the phrase you used was privately owned or privately held organization or museums, but am I correct saying that the museum is a Gaston County entity? It's not just called the Gaston County Museum. It's actually operated by the Gaston County. I don't know what the phrase is, but
it's governed and facilitated by the county. Yes, we are a county department.
Thank you. That's the word I was trying to come up with. Sorry about that.
If people come to me and say, my tax dollars at work, you are 100% right.
Yeah,
this is a tax dollars run facility.
So, Jason, what do you envision the museum, if you can look out 5 or 10 years, what do you envision the museum looking like?
I think it's going to be exhibitry that's a lot more diverse and inclusive about the history and art of Gaston County. I think it's going to be one that is a lot more active in research and understanding of our community, being more of a resource to the community. The museum was, as a department, has working with the Historic Preservation Commission for the county. Is now part of our institution, or part of our department, and I think that's going to be another big part of it. I don't know if anyone's noticed, there's been a lot of growth going on, and that's going to directly affect our structures. For years, our structures were fine. They just kind of sat there, and there wasn't any real big development projects. Maybe one or two were in danger, but for the most part, they're okay. Well, that's not the case anymore. We're going to see entire neighborhoods disappear. So for us, as preserving the historical structures and historical sites, I think it's going to play a big role in our organization kind of moving forward as our community continues to develop. How can we incorporate these historical structures more into the development plans so we make sure that they don't disappear? So I think that's going to be something that's going to be that hasn't been part of the museum for a very, very long time. Next 5 to 10 years is going to be I think it's going to be an instrumental part of the museum.
Yeah, I think Gaston County specifically is on the precipice of a lot of even more growth than we've seen the last 8 or 10 years with things that are happening, and the growth that has happened around Mecklenburg County now. It's really, I think it's our turn to see more of that happening here.
Oh yeah, we are the last of the greater Charlotte counties to receive the big boom. And we've been saying for, ever as long as I've been part of Gaston County, it's always been the things like, well, everyone says Charlotte's going to come one day. Well, it hadn't happened yet. The Catawba River acted like the Great Wall and kind of blocked development. Well, I don't know if you've seen Belmont lately. It's come. Charlotte's here. And it's a very wonderful thing because it does bring development and revenue and excitement. But I look at it as a preservationist, and I start to break out in cold sweats because these houses these mills that we've taken for granted that will always be here are going away or disappearing, and that is a very those elements that make Gaston County unique. Those physical elements can be gone in a snap of your fingers. So that's something that we have to kind of, it's not saying we stop developments. How can we incorporate that in development to make sure we don't lose those elements that show who we are?
Well, even this table that we're sitting at, we wish we knew. We took this is flooring out of an old textile mill, and we have lost which mill when it was torn down that came out of. We built this table, I don't know, 60, 70 years ago potentially as a work table, and we really do wish we had, had specifics of where it came from. But, just like so many things, when those things happen, nobody's keeping up with that or keeping good records of it to your cold sweat point, right?
Yeah, man. It's just, I remember I was driving by on Ozark for years, Ozark Mill. Just, drive by and never thought about it. And then when I drove by and it was gone. Yeah. It was like a big chunk of it was just the earth swallowed it. And I was like, oh, fuck. And, it's just amazing how quickly it can happen. And that's, and then not, if we don't document, we don't recognize it when it's gone, it will be, slipped away. It won't be just easily ascertainable. And that is, speaking about the textile mills, we are at a very interesting point in the history of the textile mills. The children of today, the Generation Zs and the millennials, they have no concept of the textile mills.
Right.
My generation, we were the grandchildren of the textile mill workers. They still worked in the mills, or at least, remember working the mills. They had a direct lineage. This group now, none of that. There's no nostalgia. There's no I remember going to my grandma's mill village. None of that. So which is a very interesting, there's 2 points to it. One, when they hear the information, they're blown away. Like, they did what? Kind of everybody worked at the mill until dawn. That really blows their mind. And two, though, you don't have that push to preserve. They look at that old, they can look at that building and it's like, tear it down. They don't have no built-in, connection to it. So as it's this interesting concept to be able to say, oh, these old buildings we need to save. Well, why? I have no connection to them, other than that they're just these gigantic blocks. I mean, it's like, no, this built our community. This is the framework. The reason you're here is because of those things, and we need to make sure that those are not forgotten or lost, because they're very much a part of the tapestry of Gaston County, and were the key points of emphasis of our development. So it's saving those now is becoming a little bit more daunting, because you don't have that direct nostalgic element involved.
So we're going to swing back, obviously, to the museum before we finish up. Is there anything I haven't asked that I should have asked, or anything else you'd like to share specific about the museum?
I think one thing I'll swing kind of to the art part. You can tell I'm pretty passionate about the history. That's where I live. That's the world I live in.
Yeah, that's coming across.
It's coming across. It's easy to come across. But we also have, I kind of go back to the art is, Gaston, I don't know if you recognize that you had great artists come out of this area. And I mentioned the Biggers, and I don't want to, take that lightly. This family has been artists in our community since, the end of the Civil War. They moved to this area right out of the Civil War for their children to get an education at Lincoln Academy, and has gone from that, moved on from there. I mean, John T. Biggers is a international recognized artist. His work is hanging in all the prestigious museums in our country. You go to New York, you see his artwork. You go to Texas, see his artwork. Go down to Charlotte, go to the Mint, you see his artwork. He was born and raised here, and he actually said his artwork was inspired by his childhood in Gastonia. That's a powerful thing.
Sure, it is.
And it's it's one of those things where you talk to people outside of the community and say, John T. Biggers lived here in Gaston. They're like, get out. You say people here, John T. Biggers live here, and like, well, I'm happy for Mr. Biggers. And, that's one of the things that, we're really excited to be able to more showcase, and just using John and Jim and the Biggers family as an example of the embracing of our art history and celebrating it. It's an easy thing to celebrate. It's an easy thing for us to get excited about, because he was here. He recognized that. He lived here. His family still does. They still produce art. They still make great things. And it's a wonderful thing to kind of showcase to our community and to the rest of the state.
Well, that's good. This is a great example of exactly the point of why we have this podcast. So experts like you can come on and remind us, of these things. Because when it's a good point. There's several things in our county that if you live here for too long, you do take for granted. And that's probably a good example of that. So, this is, again, we're going to shift gears just briefly, and this is really, especially I'm sure the team and the staff there at the museum, this is what they really want to hear, questions they want to hear answered. This is what we call our Gaston County I don't know. We're going to call them our Gaston County historical round of questions.
All right.
Today, Jason.
Right.
So, again, we'll swing back and finish up with some more information about the museum before. But the first question, the all-important questions, and you've lived here long enough to be able to answer this one, is what is your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Rocky Road. That's
Rocky
easy.
Road.
Yeah.
Well, that was quick.
Yeah, I can eat pints and pints of that stuff.
And I think that is the first time we've ever had somebody answer Rocky Road.
Well,
so
everybody else is wrong. Rocky Road is the best flavor.
that's an excellent follow-up to that, too. Sundrop or Cheerwine?
Cheerwine. Sundrop makes me jittery.
Yeah, it's legit, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it is liquid nitroglycerin for your body. I mean, it's powerful stuff.
Favorite local restaurant?
Ray Nathan's.
Oh, Ray's good. Absolutely.
I didn't know about that. I got a gripe with everybody here in Gaston County. You kept that secret from me for a better part of 10 years. No one told me how fantastic it was. We just kind of, I was looking for some barbecue. I Googled it. This place like Ray Nathan's popped up. I was like, I'll give it a shot. And it's angels work there and make the barbecue. It is delicious. So all you jokers who never took me to Ray Nathan's, shame on you.
That's a horrible thing that we would do to somebody, especially somebody who just moved here from elsewhere.
That should be like, welcome to Gaston County. Let's go to Ray's. I mean, it's like boom, boom. Especially if you show up on a Thursday, you just go. Yeah.
Oh my! So, favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County?
Playing disc golf at Goat Island.
Okay,
that's an underused course. It's a fun course. It's a very challenging one. If you're not paying attention, you will throw it into the river. So I really like it.
Oh, that's terrific. All right, I'm gonna modify this question slightly, and this is the one question that I take personal ownership of, that I put it in here every time. So I'm gonna say UNC, Duke, NC State, or Auburn.
Auburn all the way.
That's what I figured.
Now, I will say, when you're looking at UNC, Duke, and NC State, this is my hot take on this.
This should be good.
When you're coming in as an outsider, when you're coming in to embrace your community, you do have to pick one. It's mandatory.
Right.
So you had to do a little analysis. Duke, I immediately kind of removed from the equation. It's a national school that just happens to be in North Carolina. So no, they're already out. So your big debate is between UNC and NC State. UNC is your, what everybody gravitates to. This is the one that you don't have a school. You say you're a UNC fan because you watched Michael Jordan slam dunk on somebody back in the early 90s. NC State, though, is the one that everybody goes to. This is where you get your education so you can operate in their community in a better paying job. It's kind of the Bad News Bears, the Chicago Cubs of North Carolina. So I would say to all of my fellow people who are coming in from the area, both from the Deep South or from New York City, because apparently that particular town is emptying and coming to North Carolina, I would highly recommend do not get trapped in the UNC fanhood, because that is where they're just trying to build, you're just trying to make friends. We recognize that. Don't go for the baby blue. You go for the red of NC State, because that's the actual school of North Carolina. Those are the ones who are actually making things happen. This is the engineers. This is the farmers. This is the textile workers. You join in with them. I'm getting some sad-looking eyes from one individual. Oh, okay. I'm misreading someone. Oh, well, you just – good luck when Coach K retires.
In case you didn't hear that in the background, Amy just admitted on a podcast that she's a Duke fan. I don't think I have ever heard you say that. I've known you for 4 years now, and that's the first time I'm hearing that.
I know you didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's a lovely school. It's a lovely little school that can fit in your pocket.
Jason, I might clip that, what you just described. I might clip that piece of audio out and listen to that every single day. That might be what I wake up to every day, to hear that explanation about UNC versus NC State, right, Elizabeth? Wasn't that the greatest? That might have been the greatest explanation of what's really going on around here. What's really going on around here in North Carolina?
I'm probably going to get some hate mail from my fellow historians, because UNC does produce the historians of the state. Fair. So I'll probably get a lot of angry looks.
Well, just to solidify my thought on that, do some clapping or something positive after that.
Oh, very nice.
All right, that is just the best. But I'm with you on Auburn as well. But gosh, I don't know what else to say after that. So here's a good question, Jason. What is something very few people know about you?
Something very few people know about me. I adore comic books. And it was, it's kind of like a held secret you didn't let anybody know until Marvel happened, and now you're just cool. So I can come out and say I am a big comic book fan. I love reading comic books. Always have. I love going to what's the name of the place in Belmont? There's a comic book store in Belmont. It's great. It's this little hole in the wall kind of joint.
Okay.
You can Google it and it'll pop up. Love going out there. Doc is the guy who runs it. He's a wonderful guy. He has a good little collection of comic books for Gaston County. So I thoroughly enjoy it. So that's something most people don't know about me.
I guess I would imagine Marvel did kind of change the game for some of that.
Oh yeah, nerd culture just exploded. So all of us little geeks that were sitting around reading, nerds and geeks sitting around reading our little comic books and being made fun of. Well, who's laughing now, jocks?
Yeah, exactly. All right, how about a book or anything you would recommend to our readers? I mean, our listeners.
Read and listen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different books I would recommend for Gaston County. I'm reading one right now. It's on the New Deal during the General Textile Strike of 1934 by Janet Irons. It's called Testing the New Deal. It's a great look at the labor movements that Gaston County was a big part of during the textile strikes of 1934, which a lot of people don't know about. We usually talk about 1929 to kind of stop there, but the big one was not 29. 34 was the big one. That's when virtually every mill in Gaston County shut down. And throughout the nation, throughout the South, the mills shut down. And this book by Janet Irons goes through this and kind of talks about how it was connected to the New Deal and basically the what we call the Fair Labor Acts, how they kind of came from this movement in 39. You don't really have those until after what takes place in 34. And Gaston County is at the heart of that entire thing. So it's been a very, very good book. It's an easy read for such a dense topic. So I highly recommend that as something to read. Of course, you got, Gastonia 1929, which is another great book. I guess I'm stuck on labor movements. That's a really good book to read. Robert Reagan's book, he has several different books dealing with Gastonia, development of Gastonia, also the Textile Heritage book, which it covers textile heritage, but it's kind of what we refer to as the Bible for Gaston County, because it really shows the development through the textile mills. And he meticulously went through every single mill and its history and its ownerships and kind of put all that in one book to be as kind of a reference guide. And we use that. I use it a lot when people are asking, "What is this building?" It's like, it's a mill. Let me look. And but it has a lot of good history about its development and how they all were intertwined with one another.
Again, I appreciate you sharing that. We'll make sure to note some of those in the show notes. I also appreciate you kind of indulging us on those Gaston County questions. So we're going to just finish up here shortly with a few more questions about the museum. So if you can share, again, this is about Gaston County, besides the museum, why would you say that Gaston County is such a great place?
I would say that Gaston County is a great place. It's for a county that likes to consider itself rural and small, is not rural and small. I think we Gastonians, kind of have this, it's like, well, the city is, Charlotte, and that's where you go if you want to do city stuff. But pretty much you can get anything you want here in Gaston County. Yeah. And it was also is not only the city life or what have you, but you also have the rural aspects of it. You the mountains are right here. The rivers provide wonderful entertainment. The park systems are great. Most of us don't live right on top of each other in very tight communities. So you have a little bit of that what I would consider something that you'd have to go further out to get, you can get right here in Gaston County. So it's a lovely place to live, and it provides you, everything you possibly need. The road systems we're connected to, we can get to anywhere we want to be as quickly as possible. You want to go to the mountains? Real easy. You want to go into Charlotte? As long as you don't go up, 8 o'clock in the morning, real easy. There's that element of Gaston County that just makes it's kind of, sorry, I'm going back in the history aspect. The same reason the guys came here way back when is just a great place to live. You know, the reason that the Catawba Nation settled in this area is the same reason that the colonials settled in this area, the same reason that the mills were brought. It's just a great location to build a life for yourself. And I would say that still holds true for Gaston Town. It's a great place to build a life for yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique place. So if you weren't working with doing what you do now with the museum, Gaston County Museum, what do you think you would be doing?
I don't. I would be in the museum business. I'd be in the history field. Wandering around in some site doing something. I have had enough of a different experiences where I can say I don't know what kind of history it would be, but it'd definitely be in the history field. And I've worked in, like I mentioned, historic Brattonville, that's 1700s through the Reconstruction time period. I've worked in the aviation museum business, which you're looking at aircrafts and their development and their impact on the community. I've worked in an aquarium. I worked at the Georgia Aquarium for a hot second, talking about penguins and beluga whales. So I'd be somewhere doing stuff like that.
Very good. So if you look back a few years ago, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Enjoy those knees and that full head of hair. Run more. Because the older you get, the least you're going to want to do it.
Yeah, it does. Those things, especially running. I tried to run this morning. It's a little bit different when you're of age a little bit down the road. I don't need any comments or laughing from the young people in the room. Okay.
Hey, man, it's going to happen to y'all, too. Sooner or later, your knee's going to give out. And it's that day when you get out of bed and you bend over to get your socks and your back goes out of place, you realize I have reached the plateau of old.
Yes.
When you throw your back out trying to tie your shoes.
Over very limited activity.
Just no activity. It's literally you're walking. You can walking down a hallway and throw out your hip. It is the most angering thing ever. I mean, we were watching America's Funniest Home Videos the other night. My kid just laughing, and we reached the point of old when we're looking at it, it's like, that hurts. Yeah, that person's not going to bounce back. And
you can relate to the you can relate to the video that you're watching.
Exactly, and it's no longer funny to me. It's like it's like that poor old lady's not going to be able to get back up.
Recover.
It's. And you complain about it so much more. You talk about your body a whole lot more when you get old. It's like you never talk to, when you talk about your body, you talk about your abs back when you're young. When you're old, you're talking about the mole that's on your big gut that, once your abs used to be. It's a totally different ball game. It completely stinks. Enjoy your youth.
Very good. That was a unique answer of the 28 episodes that we have had. So that's going to actually bring in the most listeners ever for that answer. So, Jason, this has really been terrific. So where can listeners go to learn more about the organization? Where exactly are you located? Surely our listeners know where you're located specifically, but we want to share that too. But again, how can they find out more information about the museum?
Well, our main building is located in the town of Dallas, on the square, where the really tall, building on the square is on 131 West Main Street. You come visit us there. We are open Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 5. Saturdays 10 to 3. We're also at the Kessel History Center in Laurel Mill. Right now, we haven't been able to get that open due to the pandemic, but it looks like things are kind of turning the course for us, hopefully. So we'll be able to get that open again pretty soon. Of course, you can check us out on our website, www.gastoncountymuseum.org, or go to the different websites and just Google us and we'll pop up. We have a Facebook, we have an Instagram account. You can find out a lot of our information, a lot of stuff that we have coming up. We make sure it's on our website, but we also make sure it's on our Facebook page. So if you want to get up to date, that's the best way to probably do it. Is become friends with us on Facebook, like all of us do, and just follow us there.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. Any last words before we wrap this up?
Enjoy your time, Gaston County. You got a lovely place to live, and really embrace it. Go out to the parks. Go get some good barbecue at Ray Nathan's. Drink yourself some cheer wine. Stay away from the sun drop so much. Just on special occasions, people.
We have to cut that part out in case choice. Somebody.
Oh yeah, I don't want to. I'm not saying it's a bad beverage choice. I'm just saying it's not an everyday beverage because it will wake you up.
So Jay Falls, if you're listening, we'll edit that out later. No, but Jason, I appreciate that. So I'm going to finish up this week with my book recommendation and my own thought kind of quote for the week, and kind of sticking with history a little bit. I have read a few biographies in my time, and one of my favorites is by Walter Isaacson. It's Benjamin Franklin in American Life. And if you, I'm a big, Revolutionary War era guy, and I've read a lot of biographies of those, the citizens who were kind of involved in leading the country at that time. But it really, Benjamin Franklin is just one of my favorite guys. He was involved in so many things. That's one I would recommend. Again, Walter Isaacson, Benjamin Franklin, American Life. And my quote of the week, I'm going to stick with Benjamin Franklin. It's one of my favorites from him, and he has a lot if you're doing any research on him. But he said, "Well done is better than well said." And I think this kind of goes in more modern times. We might call it, make sure you just don't talk it, you walk it. And it's, actions speak louder than words. So as a parent, that's something I've learned the hard way, is kids are more often paying attention to what you're doing and your actions as opposed to what you're saying. They're barely listening to what you're saying. But I think that's kind of one of the things that he was talking about there. So again, Ben Franklin, well done is better than well said. So thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com. And please follow us on our social media platforms. You can also find us and subscribe and rate the show. And I'm sure this one's going to get nothing but 5-star ratings. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, on most podcast services. Thanks again to Jason Luker from the Gaston County Museum for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Amy Anderson and Elizabeth King from GSM Services, and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.